right, welcome to this latest episode of Growth Science. Today, we are lucky enough to be joined by Sebastian Trager, CEO of reliability.com. Welcome, Sebastian.
Ben, great to be here. Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
definitely. We're really excited to speak with you. To get started here, maybe you could just share a little bit about your background and what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I've uh, been doing kind of technology related startups for probably about the last 20 years. Did that sort of right out of college in a didn't know what I was doing kind of way, and have done enough of them now that I'm getting a little bit more knowledgeable about how to do them. But pretty much all the businesses I've done have had a technology component to them, and primarily B2B. So I've always done kind of the B2B, not B2C thing. And so right now I'm doing a business called reliability.com. We offer training and software to manufacturing, industrial, oil and gas mining companies, specifically around something called root cause analysis. So we provide a tool set and training related to part of their business process.
Oh, very cool. Can you just share a little bit about what you found in throughout your career as being a key to growing a business?
Yeah, I would say it, because I've been at different stages of a business, I'm certainly it's gonna be different. If I was to kind of identify one or two keys, I think I'll just give it in two different ways. I think one key is, and this is probably something I've learned at this current business, is just the power of, and it's going to sound very obvious, but a just kind of a regular cadence of sales marketing conversations, looking at data, looking at the results, and just asking people in the room how they're doing versus those results. And so I would say kind of one key, and which again sounds really obvious, but just to come full circle to, is there's not necessarily a lot of drama in growing a business.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's just good old fashioned blocking and tackling of putting in place the regular cadence and regular meetings so that you're checking up on, reviewing, correcting for what's happening in the business. It's kind of one very basic thing I would say. Another thing I would say is, and this is kind of on the other side of the spectrum, is you've kind of heard that saying, never stop closing, or ABC, always be
Right.
closing. I feel like another thing is like always be communicating, right? Like always be just talking to the marketplace, making sure you're in front of people, getting out there in front of them, and just being very dedicated and disciplined to kind of having that growth mentality.
All right, very cool. When you started with reliability, was it a challenge to set up those sort of fundamental reports and meetings? Were people on board with being able to put that process in place?
Yeah, so this business was interesting because it had a 35-year history. I bought the company, and so I then kind of added a technology component and started growing it. And so the benefit of a business with such a long history is they had some really loyal customers, and just provided a great service. And so you have all the ingredients there for a great business. And I kind of jokingly say, I realized from a business that had that long history, we almost had like fridge magnets all over the world, right? Where if something happened where they needed somebody who did something, we were already the ones that they were going to call. And that's amazing for a business to have that long a track record, deep relationships, a good product that people want. But in terms of growing into new markets or new customers, we didn't necessarily have good systems in place. And so one of the first things we did was we put in place like a robust CMS. In our case, we put in HubSpot. We found that to be, Salesforce, HubSpot. There's many out there. We just picked HubSpot for various reasons. And that became just a really useful tool for us to keep up with everything going on in relationships going on with our business.
Mhm. What I'm curious about, one of the things that we deal with a lot is that as organizations shift to founders to bring in an outside CEO, and in this case, you purchased the business, how did you build trust among the team so that they were, able to buy into your vision?
I think I made a lot of mistakes on that front. I'll just say, like, I'm not sure I'm the model of like, here's exactly how you build trust and get everybody in the boat with you, going downriver. I mean, I would say I was probably underestimated the value of some of the ways that our team did things in the past, because in our case, they were pretty different from some of the technology backgrounds I had come from. I probably underestimated how strong those were, and I probably was over reliant or thought more highly of the tactics or tools that I was used to. And so I would say I was an example of kind of everything you don't want to do, where it's like you think your way is a lot better than the old way, and let's change everything overnight. And so, but I do think that, so while I did make a lot of mistakes early on, because I do think we were leading with the right tools and the right processes and the right go-to-market with a goal towards growth, I think that has, over time, we have grown and it's benefited everybody. And so it's been more of a come with me anyway. And over time, you'll see that this has been a good thing. I wish in retrospect, I had spent a little bit more time casting vision, trying to help get people a little bit more on board.
Okay. All right. Interesting. What, and I think that's a good advice probably for anyone in your situation. So thank you for that. What, you talked about regular communication or communicating, frequently. Is there any sort of, do you have a cadence you put in place? Is there processes you put in place to support that communication, or is it just something that you've sort of internalized and say, I just need to make sure I'm communicating frequently?
And are you saying with like the market or with our internal team there?
With your internal team.
Yeah, so I'd say with our internal team, at least for me, I've realized like my forte is not as a manager. I'm more of a strategist, and then I actually like to do. Like the one reason I've loved the startup or small business stage is I sort of like being involved, and but I've realized, because I'm not a great manager, one thing I've realized to offset that is I am pretty good at like scheduling meetings and making sure they happen, and going through the same agenda every single week, even if, so that's kind of how I've learned to compensate for what's maybe not a natural gift, is putting a normal cadence in place, making sure everyone's aware of what that is, and just doing it every single week. Obviously, thinking through, is this the best meeting? How can we improve it time to time? But for the most part, just being like, hey, Monday, first thing we do, we have a sales meeting. We go through deals from what closed last week, what's on the horizon this week, what's a little further out, what do people need help on, what else can we provide? That meeting is just going to happen. It doesn't have to be longer than 30 minutes, but it has to comprehensively go through deals, have everyone talk about them and discuss them, and create a collaborative environment. And then same thing on the marketing side. Hey, we're going to do the 30-minute meeting. We're going to look at the numbers. We're going to consider, what's working, where we have to make changes, any new initiatives that we want to try. Let's kind of plan that out. And so by keeping pretty short meetings, but consistent with a common agenda, that's kind of my approach to just at least making sure we're communicating what the goals are. And then on a quarterly basis, pulling up, resetting the team, setting new goals, and moving forward from there.
I mean, that's amazing. I think one of the things that surprised me, and we've worked with quite a few different B2B SaaS companies, is how infrequently those meetings actually occur. Like you said, like, oh, this is kind of just, you would expect, it's not like revolutionary, but it's amazing how infrequently that companies are actually doing that. So it's terrific that that's something.
Well, and I think it's because like a business that's maybe founder or CEO or founder, CEO, owner led, there's a lot on that person's plate, and so obviously if you're at a smaller growth stage, you're always wanting to make sure, like, if there's a big fish on the hook, that's what your priority is. But of course, putting those systems and processes in place, I find so valuable because you're so busy. It almost frees you up to just say, if I kind of schedule 4 to 6 meetings a week, 30 minutes, and I really make those unchangeable as much as possible. Then in a few hours, I can kind of make sure all of the good processes and are happening so that I can actually spend my time on some of those other things that come up. I really learned that. I think I took a detour from kind of small business to work at a large nonprofit for a while, where again, much bigger team, wasn't necessarily as dynamically changing, but we had a lot of things going on there. And I became a huge fan of Patrick Lencioni, and just some of his advice on how to manage a team. And I realized it was so helpful to me because a lot of what he's doing is just the blocking and tackling on meetings, like define every meeting, schedule them, make sure they're consistent, accomplish an agenda. And so that again spoke to me as somebody who doesn't naturally do that.
Right. Yeah.
It helped me to just kind of put some of those processes in place that allowed me to, just scale my time a little bit better.
Well, very cool. Very cool. And then on the communication front again, how do you get feedback from your customers in terms of like what's working, what's not working, what would they like to see improve?
So that's a great question. So on our customers, we very early on, for our software customers specifically, not so much the training, but we set up quarterly calls with all of them. So anybody who has an account of a certain size, we have a quarterly 30 to 60 minute check-in call, where again, the agenda is here's what we've got on the roadmap. Here's what just launched. Well, here's what just launched. Here's what's on the roadmap. What questions are you having? What concerns? What other problems are you facing? What are your big picture priorities that may or may not have anything to do with us? So we're just trying to, on a quarterly basis, have that call. We actually set it up so any members from their team who are using our software can also come. So we make the last 30 minutes almost like a live Q&A, like, is there something you don't understand how to use? Let's have that call on a regular basis. We've tried to get a little bit more sophisticated with those meetings, where we're now also asking, what are your big picture KPIs, so that we can organize every meeting around what their KPIs are and how are we helping you to accomplish those. So that's just something we're doing with all of our clients. The other thing we're doing is, again, because we spend a lot of time on software, and we're constantly building new features. We're also trying to go to them early on in the process, show them wireframes, get feedback, ask them, how they would use it, et cetera. So with that kind of quarterly meeting coupled with the feature meetings, we feel like we have pretty decent coverage of our clients.
Wow, that's terrific. That's definitely a great lesson too. It's great to hear that. You've worked with a number of different companies and organizations. Is there anything that you think is a key that keeps a company or organization from growing?
That keeps it from growing? I think it's, again, I'm going to probably say something that's a little bit more common sense or kind of more obvious. I love the book of Proverbs, and there's one of the Proverbs says, the appetite of a laborer keeps him going. Right. So the hunger keeps you going. And I think sometimes companies honestly lose some of that hunger, some of that appetite. And so that mentality actually slows down growth. I'll give an example. One of my kids has started a small business here, and he quickly got 3 or 4 customers, and it's it doesn't matter what it is. And then he's kind of stopped handing out flyers, right? He's stopped hustling new business. So the good news is he has that existing business and he's doing great with it, but he's not growing. And I would say that's what I see with other businesses. They kind of lose that hunger to grow, and then they stop hustling, right? They stop just doing those things of like, I always think of it as like passing out flyers. Like, I don't want to go door to door passing out flyers. I want to, it's just too much work to keep doing that. I think that's one thing. They kind of stop hustling. I'd say the other thing is, I do think you have to constantly be thinking about, is the offers that we're making, how we're packaging, how we're pricing, whether it's a service or a product, are these the right ways to package and price in the market? Not, I copied another SaaS business and this is what they did, or I just am doing it the way we've always done it, but constantly be thinking about, where are the incentives in a customer's mind? Am I overcomplicating this? Am I not giving enough options? Am I giving too many options? Let me give an example of this. We were starting to, as a company, from an offer perspective, felt like our offer was a little complicated, and it wasn't setting up a win-win partnership because we were pricing our product at a per user basis. And
Right.
so we realized it was kind of a lose-lose because we would say it's X per user, and the companies we worked with would say, well, wait a second, if this is successful, we have 1,000 users. I
Right.
multiply by 1,000, that's going to blow me out of the water. Okay, let's only use this with with only a handful of users. Well, that's a lose for us because we don't have a long-term partnership.
Right.
And then on the other side, yeah, we just realized we had to. So we actually came out with an unlimited model, which we scoped it enough that you can't kind of abuse that. There's some ways we did that, but that just unlocked all kinds of value for both us and our customer, where it lets them know, okay, so here's the highest we'll ever pay, but it also lets us get started knowing that the goal is a long-term partnership where we're working together to add value. And so I would just say that's another, I think, lack of hustle, and then you kind of stop thinking smart about like your offers and where the market might be more receptive to what you're doing.
That's interesting. That's fine. Those are two topics I've recently done videos on, and I'm just to go back to the hustle. What do you think you can do to imbue that into the organization? Like what will motivate an organization or the individuals within it?
It like again starts at the leader. The leader has to have some level of hustle. Again, I don't think I'm this perfect paragon of that, but I strive to like, no deals too small. Don't only care about the big ones, and deals are not just about like getting it across the finish line, and that's really just the beginning of the relationship. So just making sure that the organization as a whole is seeing the leader doing that, modeling like I care about following up with this. And then I do think putting some incentives in place doesn't hurt, right? Making sure people know that, I'm asking you to do this, but I'm also, it's yes to grow the business, but I want it to be a win for you as well. So as we grow the business, I want you to benefit as well. So making sure there's good incentives there. I've been, again, newly reminded of the power of just clear incentives and how that is helpful in motivating. And then, of course, just from the very beginning, getting people on the team who kind of have a little bit more of that hustle.
Right.
I do think in small business, so one thing I appreciated in the startup world is that let's say you raise outside capital, let's say you have an option pool, people are coming in knowing that, hey, if we don't execute in a certain amount of time, we don't have jobs. And if we do execute, not only do we have jobs, but we have some upside. That's a great tool for focusing people on hustle. There's other problems it creates, but it solves for that. I think in a business, if it's maybe a small business or one that might not have that same focus, I think you just have to be creative about how do you create that in a slightly different way so that people recognize they can benefit dramatically if the business does well.
No, I think that's great perspective in that. I mean, just to think about what you can do to help like inspire or instill this hustle in your employees, like that process can be really powerful because I think it can be a differentiator in terms of how fast your business is growing.
Absolutely.
What principles do you use to run your business?
So, I've sort of had a motto from sort of the very beginning, kind of a work hard, work smart, trust the process. It's kind of like the way I think about. Well, let me even start one earlier. I'd say I start with like we always have to be adding value to customers,
Mhm.
and I take that. That's why we have these phone calls regularly with our customers. I know that sometimes people buy because they just need a solution and they don't care what they have to pay for it. And as the person delivering a service or product, you kind of know, all right, we're making a ton here because they're not really using it, or I don't understand why they're buying it. And that's going to happen. And I'm not going to question, okay, they see the world a little bit differently. That's okay. But at the same time, I want to make sure as much as possible, I know we are delivering actual value to a customer. I can quantify it even better than they can quantify it. So I try to set that as the bar. We need to know the value we're producing. One of the earlier businesses I started was in the real estate space, where we recognized that real estate agents were getting leads, and then not necessarily following up with them, although those leads were actually a huge pipeline to future business. So we built a module to automatically respond to leads on the agent's behalf, to route them to other agents and to basically close more deals. And we knew we just could so easily quantify how valuable that was, that we knew any customer who used us, it was like, we can almost guarantee this is the results you will get. It's that straightforward to us. So I love that. So principle one is kind of like, make sure you're adding value. And then I think how we do that: work hard, work smart, trust the process. And I say working hard is not be a perfectionist and work 80-hour weeks. It's just whatever time you've set aside for work, put in the time and be intense during that period of time. Work smart. Obviously, we want to make good decisions. So we want to be strategic. And I also add scrappy to that. I want us to be scrappy and like working smart. Like don't just always pick the thing you've always done. And then trust the process. If we're being customer centric, we're working hard, we're working smart. Let's not overly obsess about results. Let's just trust that they will come, right? It's hard. We've all known, especially in kind of the sales and marketing world, you can work really hard and not get a deal. Sometimes one email, next thing you know, a deal comes in. So, but big picture, you got to kind of have that process in place. And then the last principle I always like to talk about is like investing in people personally and professionally, so that work is absolutely about generating revenue and seeing results for the company. But I also want any business people are involved in with me, I want it to be a win for them personally. They're growing professionally. They see this as part of the journey that they're on. That, hey, anytime you're with me, you're probably want to have this job forever, is a huge growth opportunity. And then I'd also love for them to see that through this work, they're able to invest in their communities, whether that's a family, a church, or other neighborhood organization. I want them to have excess time and capacity and financial resources where on one level they can say it's just a job because I'm using it to pour into these other things that I care about. So those are some of the principles I try myself to live under, and then to kind of lead our team to live under.
Okay. All right. Terrific. Um, it seems like technology is changing really quickly. I mean, you can't go on LinkedIn or read the paper about without someone mentioning AI or some other technology change. Is there anything in 2024 that really excites you, that motivates you, that you're interested in learning more about from a business perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I do think AI is, I mean, we're just so barely scratching the surface of what that's going to do. We've built an AI module into our product. We're still experimenting with other ways we can incorporate it. I would suggest every business owner or manager who's listening to this at least experiment, even if it's just going to like a Chat GPT or Gemini or whatever, and just play with it and just see what it can do. On a personal level, I used Chat GPT, and I have the paid version, to actually make my 6-year-old daughter a coloring book on her birthday, where she was kind of the hero of the story. So there was like there was 10 stories, and then a page she could color, a page she could color, almost all generated through I mean, we edited it and stuff, but it's incredible. So I just look at that and I think, for people who are creative and are maybe don't have the, like, I can't draw, I really can't write. But I can envision ideas, and I can say, oh, it'd be fun if we had this. I was able to use that tool to kind of bring out a new product. So I am very excited about what AI can do in that regard. That's probably, for me, the main technology that I'm spending time on. And I'm using it in lots of different areas of life. Like, I'm not a doomsdayer. I don't predict the future in terms of jobs that'll lose or the machines will take over. I'm not at that level. I'm more at the level of, wow, it makes it more interesting to plan a family vacation when you can say, here's what we're trying to do, boom, and it's like,
Right.
wow, there's an itinerary that's pretty good.
Right.
So yeah,
That was
I'm
the
probably
idea.
more at like that fanboy level.
Okay. All right. All right. That's terrific. What last question for you. You mentioned well, the question is there any other books that have really influenced your career?
Great question. I mean, I would say I love the Jim Collins books, Good to Great, Built to Last. That was very, very helpful for me, and just that kind of long-term vision. And what I loved about those books were, I think people have the idea that you have to be a very charismatic leader to grow an organization, and those books really debunk that to say, no, you need to be, a clockmaker, right? Not a time teller. And so just kind of that idea that like building the right systems and processes are very powerful for innovation and for getting things done. And so that always inspired me. And then I talked a little bit about Lencioni, whereas Jim Collins, I felt gave like the big picture framework. For me anyway, Lencioni really gave the practical tool set of how to actually make that happen. And I also like Lencioni because I'm a more just by nature like analytical look at spreadsheet person, and so I think Lencioni really has a heart for people, and so a lot of his practical tools are about how do you interact better with people to bring about a healthy organization, to find not merely as like financial results but also relational and just kind of those human results. So those have been just very influential authors for me, and kind of that big picture, and then just kind of on the ground, how to play it out. Those are just two I'd highlight.
All right, that's terrific. That's terrific. Well, Sebastian, thank you for your time. I will post links to both, I mean, to reliability.com, just if people are interested in finding out more, and then to the books that you mentioned. I really appreciate your insights. That was terrific. I think that's provides lessons that others can learn from what you say are your mistakes, but I think it's an opportunity for people to learn and help grow their businesses too. So thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me, and yeah, appreciate you and the work that you're doing.
All right, thank you.